You're listening to Level Up with Wondr, a podcast where we take listeners on a journey through the exciting world of gaming, tech, and innovation. Join the Wondr Nation team as we talk with a diverse group of pros who have taken their skills to the next level.
Hello, Wondr fans. My name is Drew Quinn, and welcome to another episode of Level Up with Wondr. Today, we have a very special guest, a well-respected figure in the industry, Tomash Devenishek. Tomash has several years of experience in the tech industry and has more recently brought his expertise to the sports betting industry as the founder and CEO of Kero Sports. Awarded the top prize at the inaugural SBC Summit Barcelona First Pitch in 2022, Kero provides gaming operators with technology that adds a casino-like experience to sportsbook apps, delivering new bets in seconds for immersive and consistent betting experiences. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Drew. I'm excited to chat.
Perfect. So thought it'd be great to start with your background. What drew you to the sports betting industry? Did you always know you wanted to work in this space, or was there a specific moment that really sparked your interest?
If you like sports, there's always a non-0% chance that you're going to be in the sports betting industry, right? So that was kind of my journey. Up until 4 years ago, I wasn't, and I'm in my 30s now. So a good portion of my life I spent being in the tech space in general around consumer products and things like that. But I've always been a huge fan of sports, and eventually got to a place where I had the right thesis, the right opportunity, and kind of all the stars aligned, and that became Kero. But no, it wasn't the plan, but it was always possible.
That's awesome. And how has your background and your past professional experiences helped you in building the skills you needed to start your own company?
One of the most amazing things that happened to me was in university. I was in a co-op program. I went to the University of Toronto, and what they did was, like prior to the summer, you'd have to start applying for co-op jobs. And we had this co-op job board, and you would have all the typical like Microsoft and Kraft and all these big blue chip companies kind of advertising different co-op positions. So I'm applying to all of them. I'm barely getting interviews. Nobody's responding to me, and I had no idea what was going on. So eventually, because I wanted to be in the co-op program, so you didn't have to take one of their jobs. You just had to do anything that they would approve. So I went on the general university job board, and luckily I got a job at the startup, which was like 14 people at the time. I did some marketing, digital stuff for them. That got me through my first co-op summer. When the summer ended, the guy said to me, he said, "Hey, like, what are you going to do while you're studying? Are you going to work at all?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll probably go back to my lifeguarding job, because that's what I did in high school." He said, no, like, if you can, please stay with us part-time or whatever. And I got to really see this company grow from whatever it was, 14 people to like 100 plus over the course of my university journey. That was super, super important because it gave me a taste for what it's like to build something from scratch. Post-university, I went to work for bigger companies, and that was more sort of technology related, and then came back to the tech startup space again in the form of like head of product, and then in the form of CTO, etc. At the end of all that, I was in a place where I had a lot of technical skills, but also a lot of business skills. And I've seen sometimes, I think in general, what you need is the belief that something is possible. And how you get that belief is by seeing it done with your own eyes, like seeing something come to fruition. So I've had more than anything a good, strong belief that I could build something, because I have as part of something that wasn't mine, but like I've had the skills and I've had the experiences, and that kind of got me to start. So it was a combination of everything: technical skill set, confidence, know-how, contacts, relationships, etc., resources.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's a perfect transition too, when you talk about having the confidence to build something. Let's talk about Kero Sports and building this company. What accomplishments are you most proud of?
Yeah, I mean, 4 years from when we started to now, there's been a lot of evolution to some extent. But also, the one thing that's been a complete constant is the thesis. And so the thesis with which I started the company, and maybe I'll talk about what the company does today, and then we can kind of come back to what we were doing 4 years ago. Today, when you go to bet on sports inside your favorite sports book or fantasy or daily fantasy app, what you're doing is you're interacting with content, right? So if you're betting on the over under points for a particular basketball player in a game tonight. You're engaging with betting content. What most people don't know is that no matter the brand, even some of the biggest brands, that content is not produced by the brand. It's coming from a company typically that specializes in that particular thing. So like NBA player props or something else. What Kero does is we are a specialist in micro betting content. And what micro betting means is literally the ability to bet on the next shot or the next free throw or the next anything, the next play in football or the next at bat in baseball or the next shot in soccer, et cetera, et cetera. We do that today. And we do it with a very, very unique approach that nobody else in the industry does. Our approach is that as a fan of sports or somebody who's betting during the game while you're watching the game, for the most part, you're doing that because you're looking to elevate your entertainment experience, right? If you were just betting to make money, there's lots of ways to do that. But if you're betting on something that you're watching, some portion of you is looking to be entertained more. And our thesis is that if you have hundreds of markets that you could bet on, and you have to scroll through all hundreds of them and calculate the odds in your head to compare them to what you're seeing, eventually pick something, bet on it, and then wait 30 or 40 minutes for it to happen. That's more work than entertainment, right? The entertainment experience, and this is, I now go back to the original thesis of the company when we started, was you should be able to consume betting content that is served, curated, or recommended to you based on what it is that you're seeing. And so what Kero does is not only do we build short-term micro markets like will this player's next three-pointers go in or not, but we recommend and elevate those types of markets when they matter. So, for example, yesterday I was at the Miami Heat Mavericks game, and Jimmy Butler wasn't scoring that much, let's just say, right? So the algorithm will pick that up and serve some type of a market related to his scoring streak when he's actually on the court, because that's when you want to bet on Jimmy Butler. You don't want to bet on Jimmy Butler when he's sitting out or not really in the game or whatever. So that's what we do. We combine this notion of being able to build really good odds on whether something happens with this notion of recommendation, pair that together. And then as a user of a sports book with which we work, you could just sit back, watch the game, and kind of make continuous short-term markets that are hopefully very engaging and exciting for you. The thesis was always that. But obviously, to go from idea to implementation, there's a lot of stuff. Where we started was purely with let's provide this type of experience to sports fans as like a fun experience where they can wager points and maybe win jerseys or tickets to sports games. How we delivered it was through professional sports teams. So we worked with a lot of, and still until today, work with sports teams who use us as a fan engagement solution, where their fans inside their apps use our technology to predict what happens next in the game, talk to each other. It's kind of more of a social sort of free-to-play environment. Obviously, there's a huge journey between those two places. The ability to take real money bets, help sports books take real money bets with our content, from kind of this idea of, hey, let's figure out how we can deliver highly contextual, curated micro markets in real time to fans.
Yeah, that's awesome. You kind of touched on it already, but what would you say really makes your offering unique from other micro market providers?
We don't try and inundate the end user with another list of 100 things because they already have hundreds of options in terms of stuff that they can bet on, and rather allow them to sit back and be served stuff that's contextual. Look at all mainstream forms of digital entertainment. Like when you go on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or whatever, you're not going into a category of things and then searching for something and going through dozens of options before you find that one piece of content that you really want to engage with. No, it's every piece of content that is put in front of you has some probability of being engaging to you. And so, yeah, you might scroll past 2 or 3, but then, you pause and like something and then read something and so on and so forth. So this is kind of what we're trying to mirror as well. And nobody in the industry is doing that, because I think the few folks who do have a footing in the space, they're all odds providers. Whereas we kind of think about it through the entire journey of the user experience, right? Like, what does the user need? What is 5 years from now, how would people bet on sports? And so we try and kind of take a longer term view and really look at the macro trends in human digital behavior.
That's awesome. And then again, you've already touched on this a little bit, but Kero puts a lot of emphasis on micro betting and social gameplay, the social aspect. Why do you think these components really resonate with customers?
Well, it depends on which vertical we're talking about, right? As I've said, we work with many of the biggest pro sports teams in the US. And I think there, the social aspect is quite important. Obviously, on the real money sports betting side, it's probably less important because ultimately people are there to bet real money. And so that the focus becomes less on socializing and more on kind of what you're doing. But I do think that any behavior that we as humans perform is always a lot more fun when you know you're not doing it alone. If you're betting on, let's just keep rolling with the Heat Mavericks game. If you're betting on that, would it not be fun to know like who else bet on the same stuff that you did? Or like who's really crushing it in this game right now? And like what did they bet on and stuff like that? Anything that we do socially makes it more fun for us. And because we try and think about the entire user experience, we do tend to also question like, hey, what would help with something like this? I'll give you an example. A lot of our partners are actually international operators. We have one really large European operator who's also in Latam and other places. And what we did with them was on top of the micro markets, which it's a really, really cool product actually, because they have streaming rights. So they have the stream inside the sports book.
Wow.
Right below it is a feed of micros that come in every 15 seconds. So you're watching a basketball game. Jimmy Butler scores his third 3-pointer in a row. You're seeing it on video. And then suddenly it's like, Jimmy's on fire. What's his next shot? A 2 or 3 or something, right? So it's really, really cool product.
That's cool.
Yeah. But then it gets better. What they did was to incentivize people to feel like they don't just have to win every bet. They also put a jackpot mechanic. So every time you're betting, you're winning, you're spinning for free for a 25,000 euro jackpot. It doesn't cost you anything. It's like a free bonus almost with every bet. Every bet you make, there's a free bonus. But this ties into your original question, like how does social play a part? So then what we did was, on top of all this, there's also it's almost like a tracker of who's winning the jackpot. And why is that important? Well, it's important because if I'm there and I'm playing, I bet once, I didn't win the jackpot. I bet twice, I didn't win the jackpot, 3 times. But then I see, oh, Drew just won 15 euros in the jackpot.
Yep.
That's fun for me. First of all, I know there's like Drew is here and he's also betting. But now I see that he's winning. He just won 15 euros. Okay, like somebody's winning, so I should keep going. Right? So it's like, this is what I'm saying by we're a little bit different than everybody else, because we think about the entire user experience versus just let us make odds on a static list of 15 or 150 markets.
Yeah, for sure. Now I want to transition onto you and your leadership qualities. So as a founder and CEO, what is your leadership style? How do you inspire innovation and growth within your team?
Well, I'll tell you what I try and do. I don't know if I succeed, right? But it starts at the hiring. The ideal hire is somebody that we can give a platform to flourish and succeed. Like we never hire we have these 3 things that somebody has to do. And it's basically, we're just getting a robot in to like perform the same tasks over and over. That's not like, people will hate their lives. And because we're not a car wash, no offense to car washes, but whatever, like we're in the sports.
Yeah.
Right. Like people can be excited about their work. So we start with that. We're like, can we give Drew a platform to be excited about what he's doing, to express his curiosity? Could Drew be a good fit for our culture? And then does he have the kind of hunger, appetite, and curiosity to grow? And if the answer is yes to most of those things, then we bring you on. And I think part of why that's important is because it then requires less micromanagement to actually succeed and inspire and whatever, right? Like you've been brought into a fertile ground where you can succeed as an individual. And if everybody succeeds, then the team succeeds. What I do a lot is I try and, as an avid fan of sports, I draw a lot of parallels between sports and like sports management and you know, I'm a big soccer fan. So soccer is a better sport to use as an analogy because you have at least 11 players, right? Like basketball, you only have 5, etc. Soccer is 11 players. Everybody's different. People have to shift sometimes and like cover for each other in different positions. And so like, what are the different management techniques that certain coaches use? And, you know, some are very rigid. Others are more fluid and kind of adjust. I've studied them a lot. And so I try and bring kind of the best of what I see in all of them. But ultimately, the best structure, I think, is you have a combination of superstars, but you cannot have all superstars. Right? In soccer, there's a central midfielder position, and it's not often a celebrated position, but like all the best teams that win have a really, really good guy in that position that 3 years, 5 years later, like nobody ever talks about. So it's kind of a thankless job. But like, this is the guy that made it. It's not Messi or Ronaldo. Like, of course, it's those guys too. But like, without this guy, Messi never gets to score those goals. You know, Ronaldo never gets to score those goals, and this team never gets to. It's this kind of combination of, you know, different talents, different personalities, and ultimately organizing it all against one mission. Like for us this year, now that we're kind of matured and we have customers and all that stuff, it's really a 2-part objective. It's an objective of turnover or handle, which is a factor of our distribution and kind of the demand for a product. Luckily, we've done a great job for both in both of those areas. Then the second one is the factor of our hold, i.e., like how efficient is our product, right? It won't help us to have $1 billion in turnover if our hold is negative 5%. It's just those 2 factors, right? Like how good is our product, and then how widely distributed is it, and how much is it resonating with the industry. Luckily, we've done a great job in both, and so it's all about kind of scaling that. But when you talk internally to the team, they have to know, because anybody on the team ends up being in one of these kind of areas, right? Like I am partially responsible for how good our hold is, or I'm partially responsible, like I'm on the sales team, I help with distribution. I'm on the product team, I help with how much it's resonating, and so on and so forth. So you need that clarity.
That's great. And then I wanted to ask, what advice would you have for someone looking to build their own company in the sports betting space or just in the tech space in general?
I think one, like, get to understand what it takes. And there's no better way to do that than work at a startup. You hear about like, oh, Zuckerberg or this or that. There's like a handful of dudes or girls who were first-time founders and actually hit it out of the park. And there are hundreds or thousands more examples of successful entrepreneurs who earned their stripes elsewhere before they did it themselves. Like I've met now a few founders who were first-time founders and thought it was kind of like it is in the movies, but it's not. You need some of those skill sets. There's nothing wrong with going and working somewhere where you can be part of the journey, get paid, have none of the downside, and come out with all of that knowledge like I did. Invaluable. In hindsight, like because I was an immigrant and all that stuff, I always now reflect back and realize, man, like none of them really paid me well, but like, I don't care. The value that I got learning all of that stuff has brought me here, and it like 10 times more value. So who cares about what the money was like? The experience is invaluable. So I do think that people should spend a bit more time understanding what they're getting into in practice. And then from there, it's like that belief that I talked about, right? It's really, really important to have those examples in your mind, and because you will get challenged. Like it's not easy. You will get those challenging moments where you're like, should I keep going? Should I stop? Is this going to be great? Is this going to be a failure? And like you'll need that belief and experience. Difficulty is part of the journey. Otherwise, everybody would do it. And then, yeah, just some skills, right? Like for me, again, I was blessed with a combination of technical and business acumen. So I could kind of go across both. I think for folks that may not have both, one good advice is like get yourself a partner that complements you in that. It's almost like I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse for me because I could do both, so I never had a partner. But like certainly you see those two, like there's a reason why Y Combinator only invests in the companies that have two founders, right? Because it's just much easier to succeed that way. So yeah, if you don't have a technical skill set, find a partner that has that. Or if you're a super techie but you're self-aware enough to know that it's very hard for you to go on a podcast or get into a boardroom and do a sales meeting or whatever, like get yourself a partner that can do that. They're both equally important. Those would be probably the top advices.
Cool. Now I want to transition into sports betting and the future of sports betting. So I want to ask, how do you see the sports betting landscape changing over the next 5 years? And what role do you see technology playing in driving these changes?
I think you could see it now. Certainly people love like same game parlays, right? Huge products category. And the reason for that is it's actually nothing new. It's just a different form of lottery, right? High upside, very low likelihood, but people will kind of take that. Like the more you stretch those two, the more appealing it becomes. And I think there's a study somewhere about this, I'm pretty sure, where people will drive across state lines to buy a lottery in the other state as the jackpot is bigger, even though, like, statistically speaking, the probability of winning it is lower on that side. But you'll still go through all the trouble to go and buy that lottery ticket because it's just a bigger, like the number is shinier, right? So I think this combination of the lottery mechanic and the mechanics of what we're doing, which is kind of more curated. If you shoot those two atoms at each other, you really get like a nuclear reaction. I do think that that's probably the next big thing is the combination of these two, because today they're separate mechanics, right? You've got a bunch of like same game parlay contents and companies, and then you've got some micro markets companies. But I think if you analyze the SGP space, it takes a long time. You have to engage with it, exercise a lot of cognitive ability. Then you make your SGP or even like a general parlay, and then you wait for a long time. Well, imagine you could do one every minute, smaller numbers perhaps, but like it was all kind of curated and put together, and it didn't take 2 days for it to happen. That to me seems like a pretty exciting proposition. And so I think that could be one major thing from like a technology, like the future of space.
How has the industry evolved since you founded your company 4 years ago? And have you been able to address these changes in the experiences you're providing?
It's funny because the US has changed. Globally, it's kind of, it's different. What happens in the world is very different from the US. We didn't really talk to the industry 4 years ago. So that's the thing, right? Like we went about it from like concept to some basic MVP to whatever. And really in the last year and a half, we've probably been a sports betting company. Up until then, we were more of a technology company within the sports space. But certainly like we're aware of a lot of sports books and all that. Back then, I think there was this gold rush to go live in all the places that were putting in the regulatory framework. And now it's slowed down. So now it's all about like, how do we entrench? Now there's a much greater focus on like, what is our product? How we differentiate, et cetera. 2 years ago, it wasn't that. It was all like, how do we go live in Michigan and what partnerships do we need and blah, 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 right? That's what we heard a lot of. And now people are really paying attention to the tech, to the offering, to all those things. That's the US. And globally, what we saw, and it's very true, and it's probably the kind of the underlying opportunity behind Kero, like why we're excited, is in the US, there are a handful of players. So there's two brands that control most of the market, and then 2 to 3 others that are worth mentioning who have 3 to 5% of the market, right? So it's like, it's this big oligopoly between two and then a bunch of small players. And for the most part, everybody kind of controls their entire stack, right? Like they all own their technology. They own most of what you interact with on any one of these brands is owned by them. Whereas globally, it's the opposite of that. And the global market, first of all, is much larger, but also a lot of the technology is white label. So much of it is just sourced from capable third parties. That's where we see the opportunity, right? Here it's been this competition of like, I want to own my stuff and what I have, you shouldn't have. Whereas globally, it kind of doesn't matter because, first of all, some of these brands are in 15, 20 countries, right? So like, there's no real competition with any one entity because in any country you could be a competitor to somebody else and so on and so forth. They're all happy to take the best product. And I certainly think that what we are is the best version of micro betting that you could have on the market. So that's what we see. Like that's how we react to it, right? We like, you have to understand the US landscape and realize early on, oh, we should actually spend a lot of time globally. Obviously still paying attention to the US, but you still have this major opportunity outside.
Cool. That's great. Thank you so much, Tomash. Those are all of my questions. You know, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. This has been very insightful and I really enjoyed our conversation. And I'm really looking forward to see how your company is going to grow.
Thank you
so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And thanks for the invite again.
Thank you for listening to Level Up with Wondr. Visit wondernation.com/level up for more podcast episodes about how we're reimagining the gaming entertainment industry. Want to level up your business? Visit our contact page at wondernation.com to inquire about our strategic consulting or management services.